Just a week before Thanksgiving and what's historically been the busiest travel day of the year, and low-cost Spirit Airlines coming in for a very hard landing, filing for bankruptcy. The largest such filing for a U.S. airline in more than a decade. So what's it mean for your holiday travel plans, and what went wrong here? Meghna Maharishi is an airlines reporter at Skift and joins us now. Nice to see you. So if you have plans to fly Spirit over Thanksgiving next week or Christmas, what's it mean for you?
Yeah, so I think there's going to be pretty minimal impact if you do have any holiday plans and you're booked with Spirit. Spirit is still in service, and their CEO told customers yesterday that you can still book Spirit flights, you can still redeem miles with their loyalty program. So everything is still business as usual. I think the only real direct impact could be route cuts. Spirit has already been making dozens of route cuts in the lead up to this bankruptcy. They've cut a lot of routes out of places like Boston, Charlotte, Houston. So that's a potential impact. But if you've already been affected by one of those cuts, you should have already been notified by Spirit and rebooked on another flight.
Okay, so existing reservations are safe, but would you have faith in booking a future flight? Would you right now book a flight on Spirit in the months ahead?
Yes, they're still operating, and we don't exactly know how they're going to come out of this bankruptcy. But given their plan to restructure, it seems like they'll be okay. They're probably just going to come out of it a lot smaller than they are right now. But I think it's okay to book Spirit. I will say it might feel a little bit iffy if you're trying to book maybe a year out or so. But if you're booking something maybe in the next 2 or 3 months or so, it should be completely fine.
I was on the website this morning, still offering their same deals and prices. So what went wrong here with Spirit, who was once very profitable, albeit 2019?
Yeah, so there are many things that I guess went wrong. At one point, Spirit was one of the most profitable carriers in the industry, and it made legacy carriers introduce basic economy fares because they needed to be able to compete with Spirit. But one of the things that has happened was that there were too many domestic seats post-pandemic, which made it harder for Spirit to compete. They tried to slash fares in the domestic market to attract more customers, but it still didn't work. And the biggest reason that it didn't work was because international travel just recovered a lot faster. Post-pandemic, consumer preferences changed so significantly. Customers wanted to fly international. They were willing to pay more for premium products, and that largely benefited the legacy carriers, and Spirit just couldn't compete with that. So that was one of the biggest reasons why they haven't really been able to post a profit since COVID. Another reason has been these issues with these Pratt and Whitney engines, which affect primarily Airbus jets, and Spirit operates mostly A320s and A321s, and those engine issues affected those specific planes. And that forced Spirit to also ground a number of its aircraft for inspections, and that also led to more disruptions. I think also the merger with JetBlue, when that got rejected, it just became very uncertain what sort of path Spirit could have going forward, especially just given the fact that it had around $3.3 billion in debt, with around $1.1 billion due within the next year or so. And they had already struggled to renegotiate the terms of repaying that debt.
Yeah, they hinted that they couldn't survive without that JetBlue merger. In fact, they were not lying, it seems. Can't help but wonder if a Trump administration might look upon that differently. Certainly different views on mergers. Is this just a bad business model, the very ultra low cost airline in this day and age?
I don't think that's entirely true. There's some executives who have said that it's not viable, but I think what's happening is just sort of the cycle that we're in. This is just an age where people are really more interested in flying to international destinations and are willing to pay for premium products. So a lot of it is cyclical. I do think to a certain extent, though, there is probably room to reevaluate certain aspects of the model. It seems like, for example, a lot of consumers don't really love the unbundled fares anymore, and that they are taking into account ancillaries when they're booking their flights. So maybe Spirit might be selling a base airfare to Miami from New York for maybe like $20, but then if you want to take on a carry-on or you want to check in a bag, it might cost another $150, and then it doesn't come out to be that different from flying with a legacy airline. So I think there's some room to rethink that. And it is also worth noting that other ultra low cost carriers are not doing as poorly as Spirit. Frontier has not been doing great, but it's definitely nowhere near the same stage that Spirit is in. And other smaller ultra low cost carriers like Allegiant or Sun Country, Avelo, and Breeze have done decently well, mostly because they've been able to operate in very non-competitive cities and then fly those passengers to more leisure destinations like Florida and Las Vegas.
It's interesting when you look at their peers across airlines. JetBlue stock is up 21%, Delta's up 56%, United is up more than 120%. Even Frontier, Southwest, American are all still up on the year. So you can't help but wonder about the model. But their CEO, Ted Christie, said something very interesting, and I can't figure it out. He says it's become a rigged game that benefits larger airlines at the expense of consumers. He added, it's become clearer than ever that we exist in an uneven playing field. What's he mean by that?
Yeah, so I believe he said that on an earnings call a couple quarters ago. And I guess as far as the so-called rigged game goes, there's been a lot of talk about how the airline industry in the U.S. has become so consolidated. Basically, the big four airlines, American, Delta, United, and Southwest, control around or have around 80% of the market share. And because of that, it becomes very difficult for smaller carriers to grow. They can grow and grow until a certain point, but they can't eclipse like the big four. I think that's probably going into part of that sentiment. I think another reason that Ted Christie said that is that at least under this administration, they have been pushing for more consumer rights regulations, especially around things like junk fee transparency. And that is something that is beneficial for consumers, but then it also goes against the ultra low cost model if they have to disclose every single fee that is associated with buying an airfare upfront, because it will probably turn customers away from wanting to purchase a ticket with them. I think that's another thing, but I really do think that the biggest thing going into that sentiment of this being a rigged game is that there has just been a lot of consolidation in the airline industry in the past 20 years or so that has made it really difficult for much smaller carriers to grow.
All right, and finally, so Spirit secured pre-arranged deal with bondholders that includes $300 million in financing, keep it afloat. They say they plan to emerge from bankruptcy Q1 2025. Would you bet on that happening?
It seems pretty likely. I think they'll be able to come out of it. Obviously, we don't know all the details that will go into their bankruptcy until that comes out in court in the next couple of months or so. But it seems like the plan they have in place is pretty good, and it seems like it will work out for them. If anything, the one thing that we can bet on is that Spirit, if they do come out of bankruptcy, they will just come out a much smaller airline than what they are right now.
All right, should be interesting to find out. Meghna Maharishi, an airlines reporter at Skift. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks for having me.